Welcome to Running It Back, the lessons learned podcast about sports and life and all things. Speaking of all things, I'd love to talk to Tarlin about some things. Tarlin, how you doing today?
That was a fantastic intro.
I tried.
I don't think we should edit that at all.
No, it was perfect.
It was perfect.
It was perfect.
Doing well on a Friday.
Yeah.
Definitely want to take a moment of silence. September 11th, lost some really brave souls that went into the building, 9/11, and just a tragic day. But great to spend time with you.
Yeah. And we'll try to get this out as soon as possible so that it's timely and relevant to folks in early September. In addition to the 19th anniversary of September 11, 2001, we're going to talk a little bit about that in a bit. It's also the day after the first football game of the NFL game of the 2020 season. So the Kansas City Chiefs played the Houston Texans last night in Kansas City. And we're also going to want to put that in a little bit of context. And then we're going to try to run that back to some lessons over the years, some connections to other ideas over the years. So we are going to talk a little bit about Colin Kaepernick and his role and whether he should get a job or should have gotten a job, or how to think about how he has been treated since his protest back in 2016. And we're also going to talk a little bit about quarterback controversies, because quarterback is a very captivating figure, and there can only be one starting quarterback for the most part. Typically, right? Yes. Yeah. We might even touch on some Friday Night Lights, but we're not going to overpromise. But we also wanted to, this first time we're doing a football show, just show folks we got some range. We're not just a basketball podcast. We're lessons learned from sports, and the sport that we're going to talk about right now, Tarlin, is football. And we wanted to talk a little bit about football and also just sports in general around 9/11. So I don't know how you want to.
Yeah, so it was an interesting night. One, the NBA is still going, so I was excited to know the Lakers are still marching along. Two, having football back where you know that college football rightfully is on pause. There are some teams that are playing. The NBA's figured out the bubble, MLB. This is fall. It feels like the seasons aren't stopping, and it feels like there's some sense of normalcy to have football back. So to have the Kansas City Chiefs, our Super Bowl champs, and Houston Texans playing, it was nice to have that because 2020 has been so unusual. Yeah. On top of that, the three-bagger for me was as we often do, we were having a fantasy draft the night of the first game. Yeah. Do not want to discuss how angry I am about the draft, and all self-imposed.
That might be bonus content, like your breakdown.
How bad I think the team is, and I caused all of it.
Yeah. If you're a Running It Back Gold member, you can hear Tarlin's analysis of his fantasy
of his own
team every week.
Self-flagellation.
Yeah. For just $9.99 a month, it's a bargain.
So the thing about, if you think back to 9/11 and days after 9/11, you think about world wars. Hard to say world wars. Sports is a release. Sports is a way for people to connect, to have those hours away where we all can have a shared experience and love for competition and for our players.
It's an escape.
It's a total escape. 2001, it brought, especially baseball and football, it really brought the country together, and it showed that we were strong as a nation. Last night, you were hoping that it would do the same thing. The game was played in Kansas City, limited capacity, huge stadium with 17,000 Chiefs and potentially Texans fans, any NFL fans let into the stadium. What the NFL opted to do was play this Star Spangled Banner, and at the same and prior to that, they played the Black national anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. The Kansas City Chiefs were on the field for both anthems. The Houston Texans stayed in the locker room for both anthems. And then after the anthems were completed, came onto the field so they could have a moment of silence and unity, and they locked arms in center field. As we talk about sports bringing us together, what happened in Kansas City was the players, as the Houston Texans were coming onto the field, and as they were in the moment of silence, fans were booing.
Yep.
And unclear if they were booing because the Houston Texans stayed in the locker room during the national anthem, or booing because of the moment of silence.
Yeah, or the COVID protocols where the temperature guns chilled too much, so that they didn't like the check-in process. Who knows?
But potentially, but it just continued to reinforce that while sports in the past was absolutely an escape, we aren't in those times anymore.
Yeah.
And even the Houston Texans, who rightfully didn't want to stayed in the locker room because they didn't want to make an issue of not being on the field for the Black National Anthem, or being national anthem. It wasn't about the anthem, but being supportive of fighting systemic oppression and racism. People can't see beyond that, and that's unfortunate. And we've lost that sports innocence.
Right. And it's hard to produce compelling television that way too, to folks who want that escapism. So I was watching it live, and it felt like bad live TV. Like, they didn't really know how to cover it, let alone not knowing how to cover 17,000 fans or no fans. In some ways, no fans is easier to understand because you know how they're going to react. Once you let live fans in, you don't really know what they're going to do. So it's harder to control the narrative. And who were those folks? How did they feel? It's an interesting set of questions. And then I also thought they might have just been ready for some football. They might have just been ready. I heard it was 55 degrees, so it's probably fine. Thursday night, so I'm not sure what the tailgate situation was. I imagine they're pretty tight controls over what the experience is like for fans prior to getting in, and then when they are there, it's just change for everyone. And then how did they respond to this confusing tableau that was presented for them? They booed. It's also, I think, interesting to understand that anger is just there. Like, live fans want to have a great experience. They want to go there. By the time the Chiefs started to roll, the fans were into it. They were actually into it from a football standpoint from start. But it's interesting just to think about the mindset that the players have to be in, but also the mindset that the fans need to be. Are fans in the right head about systemic injustice when they're going to see a football game right now? I think there's a little bit of fatigue there too among many of us. And I think they just wanted to get to that escapism you're describing, Tarlin. And I think it's a reminder to me of the NBA walkout where, increasingly in the bubble in the NBA, there was less coverage of what was happening pregame. And it was more like, let's just get into the routine of playing basketball because that'll be a great diversion for everybody. And then Jacob Blake happened, and it brought it all front and center. I'm not hoping for something like that, but I do think there will be more opportunities to respond to what's happening in the real time in the world around us and have players take those actions. It'll be really interesting to see if live fans continue to be part of the NFL, which it looks like they will be. What happens when there's a stronger action or something? Like, what if they decided not to play the game? Which is what Robin, my wife, who was watching the pregame with me, are they not going to play? Because she had seen, not a big sports fan, and she'd seen the Mets and Dodgers coordinate a walk-off, like a non-game, a week or two ago. So she thought they were just not going to play the game. Had they not played the game, the live fans, I think, would have been even more unruly because I think they just wanted to see the football game they were there for. So it's layers upon layers, Tarlin.
Yeah, and players have been booed forever. They've been called everything under the sun. Right. And at times when they're playing, I'm not saying it's right, but they have tunnel, they almost can't hear some of that. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying create the escape and just avoid everything else. Yeah. Right. You just have to be intentional. Mm-hmm. And to your point, it is live TV. So be intentional about what you're going to do. Yeah. And do it. The NBA has been intentional the whole time. We're going to do this during national anthem. Here's the 31 names you can have on the back of the words. You know, back in your jersey. Yep. So it's not enough for those players that are sitting in a bubble and think about not only COVID, but mental health issues, just being so isolated. Yeah. Or you have another atrocity and say, what can we do? Right. So I'm not saying I want just the full escape and don't have any of this. I'm just saying just be intentional. Yeah. And make sure that you stay committed. This is the last league to have any credibility, because let's get to Kaepernick. Yeah. The guy who has not played it down since 2016-17 season.
Right.
Was kneeling during the national anthem. He always said it was not about the United States, the flag, or people in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And he got no broad support. The owners got no, and basically, whether you like it or not, he was blackballed. His last season, Kaepernick, it was a 59% completion percentage, 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, two rushing touchdowns as well.
Mm-hmm.
He rates out whether or not it's one of the top 32 quarterbacks, but at least the top 64 quarterbacks then and now.
Yeah.
Colin Kaepernick should have a job. If you cycle to what the Houston Texans did last night, where they were not on the field for the anthem, they once again, it's Colin Kaepernick's single message with a few other people kneeling, Eric Reed and others, magnified, which is it's not about the anthem.
Yeah.
It's just about us coming together to fight what we see as what is unjust in society and continue to create an equal playing field for everyone.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like there was a massive connection point.
Yeah.
And something that the NFL needs to grapple with, because Goodell a couple of weeks ago said, yeah, we should have listened to Kaepernick earlier.
Yeah.
So they've created sort of 4 years of they have to have some more intention. The NFL is going to do a lot more to figure out how to create the escapism, but not just put a blind eye, because they will have many fans that will not be happy as our 45 like say, on both sides.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And it was interesting. I think only one player on the Chiefs was kneeling during the anthem, which is another like that. It's an oldie but a goodie that still is staying true to the original concept of the protest, which Kaepernick, and we talked about that a bit when we were talking about Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, where, you know, it was really to honor the dead is why the kneeling came in, which is something that he got from a Green Beret. So it is interesting that the symbolism of that action is something that is still being maintained, but barely. Unclear what was happening in the Houston locker room, but there was at least one player on the field who was taking a knee during the anthem, and the fans could see that. Didn't seem like that was the time when the booing was happening. It seemed like it was more during the unified action when Houston came out. But yeah, it is something we're going to continue to monitor. I do like to think the great poet Gil Scott-Heron's quote, "The revolution will not be televised." But it is interesting what happens in terms of who takes a knee and whether it makes the TV show or not, and what actually is activating change. When Kaepernick first was sitting out, no one really noticed. It was the type of thing that frequently those quiet acts of consciousness happen off camera, and those are the things that really begin a movement. What's interesting now is we're in the midst of a movement, and it's unclear where it's going to go next, which should make for better television, but it's not football. We want the escapism of the sports. Other thoughts, or do you want to move into some of the more sports?
Last thought, and then I think we can spring off Kaepernick, because I think it is interesting. We're back in the NFL season to talk about QB controversies. Part of one in the past. We all should remember the national anthem's been played in NFL games since 1945, but players were not required to be on the field during the national anthem until 2009.
Right.
So we were also fighting for something that is barely 10 years old, saying that players must do something when it was never a requirement before. And the only times that players stood for the national anthem were either during the Super Bowl or after 9/11,
right,
prior to 2009. So just something to think about when we keep wanting to wrap things that are happening and saying and I just fundamentally believe it's not about flag or being true to the country or being a good American. That being said, Kaepernick, our springboard, and he's 32 years old and maybe he'll have a job soon. Kaepernick was part of his own QB controversy back in the day, because Alex Smith, number 1 pick out of Utah, was holding down the fort. Good game manager, as they like to call him. Kaepernick was the upstart that Jim Harbaugh plucked into the lineup, and Kaepernick ended up taking the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Similar Brady-Bledsoe moment, even though Kaepernick didn't win the Super Bowl. Alex Smith did not get hurt. It was just because of his play, and he was looking for a spark. And so as we were prepping for this, you wanted to talk about some of the QB controversies out there. Which one do you think is going to be the one that we need to watch this year, as I think there are a few that draw parallels to things that we saw in the past.
Yeah, a couple. And just another beat, I think, on the race side. One aspect of quarterback controversies over the years has been whether a black quarterback could be as good as a white quarterback. And in recent years, that conversation has moved to the back burner, where right now, I think you were saying there are 10 starting quarterbacks in the NFL.
10 starting. I'd like to name them off real quick. Cam Newton, Patriots. Patrick Mahomes for Kansas City Chiefs. Deshaun Watson for the Houston Texans. Tyrod Taylor. Chargers. Lamar Jackson, MVP. Baltimore Ravens. Teddy Bridgewater, formerly of my Vikings. Carolina. Kyler Murray, second-year player in Arizona. Dak Prescott, waiting for his big contract for the Cowboys. Russell Wilson, perennial MVP, Seattle Seahawks, and Dwayne Haskins for the Washington
football team. Yes, exactly. So long history of controversy there, where frequently there weren't conversations about quarterbacks who probably should have had a shot in the NFL because of a long history of not reimagining the potential that could be realized by drafting and developing talent. So I think there is a lesson to be learned, more an error of omission over the years. There were some transcendent black quarterbacks over the years. Randall Cunningham, Mike Vick, Donovan McNabb.
Dante Culpepper. I got a lot of Vikings in me.
Yeah, Randall Cunningham jumped to mind. Also, his Philadelphia days were pretty remarkable. Yeah. But it was more of a marginal case. It was like maybe you have one or two. You know, Warren Moon, I think, is really the legend, the Hall of Famer, who many of us forget about. But there's a long history of a small number of black quarterbacks breaking through. But of late, it does seem like that is a glass ceiling that may no longer come back. Like, I think the momentum is there. And if you look at the outcome of the Chiefs-Texans game last night, Patrick Mahomes is really a transcendent talent, and it does seem like between him and Lamar Jackson, they're redefining the quarterback position in front of our eyes, and it'll be interesting to continue to see how this develops. That being said, the controversy that is probably most captivating for me right now is the Aaron Rodgers controversy, where in some ways it's replicating the controversy that he was part of. It is, the student has become the master. The roles have been reversed, and now just like he was drafted to replace Brett Favre before Brett Favre was really in Favre, excuse me, Brett Favre. Now Jordan Love. Is that his name?
Jordan Love.
Yeah, Jordan Love. I'll say it with that's good.
Utah State.
Yeah. That's a good name to remember, right? Jordan Love. We've been talking a lot about Jordan Love when we talk about The Last Dance and about how people think about the NBA. So that's a good mnemonic.
To be released soon.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Jordan Love is the rising talent who in some ways is a wake-up call for Aaron Rodgers, who's, despite winning one Super Bowl in Green Bay, is now at a point in his career where there are some questions. And I just thought from a lessons learned perspective, it's interesting to think about it really from both sides, or from all sides. All three. I think there's at least three sides that are interesting to me. One is from the aging player who is being long-term is going to be replaced. How do you establish a relationship? How do you understand how to manage that competition, that controversy, when you have the rising star who's been drafted to replace you on the one hand? Flip side, if you're the rising star, or like the psychology of the backup quarterback is another thing that I think is really interesting. A lot to learn from there. You got to be ready. You know, Tom Brady with the clipboard turned into the GOAT. So something happened there. Like, he was ready to go. Got to be ready to go as a backup quarterback. And then taking a step back, as someone who's managing a team, how do you think about keeping your talent fresh without undermining them? And how do you think about managing these generational shifts? Granted, they're going to be harder in the NFL because Father Time is undefeated. People get older and their skills decline. But I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from how to handle these things with grace and dignity, how to use them as motivators, and then how to analogize from a quarterback controversy into lessons learned for us. I don't know if you have any thoughts. Are you any opportunity?
Great. So who's supposed to have grace and dignity? I just want to start there.
We all are, Tarlin.
No. So Brett Favre, we'll take in emails for those who can spot the movie reference.
Right.
But Brett Favre held off Aaron Rodgers for a few years until he was summarily dumped into the Jets, and then he was on my Vikings where Bounty Gate, where he got beaten up and we should have gone to the Super Bowl. So it was only a matter of time. I actually go back to something that Belichick did as well, drafting Garoppolo in the second round.
Yeah.
After Brady had 2 okay seasons, really having poor performances in the NFC or AFC championship games. And then he had to your point, Bledsoe. Brady had a resurgence.
Yeah.
Unbelievable footwork, and went on a run of some of his best quarterbacking from 37 to 40 that you've ever seen.
I think Giselle introduced him to capoeira, but that's a separate story.
That was a separate story.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone wants to see him do that. But thank you for letting me
you're
know.
welcome. You're welcome, listeners.
That's some deep research.
Yeah.
So to your point, if you are the GM, you have an aging star. And most people believe that his arm talent, the only person someone that can rival his arm talent is maybe Mahomes and Rodgers. But he's only won 1. Some will say, though, he hasn't had the weapons around him. And you can make the same argument about Brady. And so if you're Rodgers and you're at your peak, you want to just bring in some more talent. And so you're pissed. So why would I have grace? At the end of the day, yes, it's a team I played for my whole career. But why should I be happy about your future? I want to be happy about my now.
Right. But the flip side, if you don't have that grace, and you could also use it as a motivator. But
100%.
I think that grace as an alternative to breaking too bad to the point that it gets in the way of your performance. There is an element of professionalism. At the end of the day, he needs to be more mercenary about it.
That won't happen.
Well, I mean, if he wins the championship, things change.
I'm saying you can't have, just because someone's sitting in the same QB room and you're an ultimate talent, just because someone's there, that should not affect your psyche. He's got 300-pound lineman breathing down and chasing him down. Like Jordan Love's there, that's fine. Yeah. I think his game, I would watch out for Aaron Rodgers this year. I think he's gonna ball.
Right.
And it's just, to your point, and Aaron should see this. Like, he watched it with Favre. He's gonna put Jordan on the sideline. He'll be there for a few years if Aaron wants to stay.
Yeah.
Aaron has said that he doesn't think he's there for the long haul.
Right.
So,
and then I think the other element of it is wearing more the management hat. The insurance policy around injury in the NFL is real. So in the event that you do lose the Drew Bledsoe, Tom Brady, arguably they had underinvested in a 6th-round draft pick from Michigan to back up Bledsoe, but Brady had some of those intangibles. So they liked what they saw with that kid. But there is an insurance.
Watch his combine video.
There is an insurance policy aspect to it. And if you think back to other quarterback controversies, in the case of the 49ers, you had 2 future Hall of Famers in Joe Montana and Steve Young back in the 90s. And Young was really drafted to replace Montana, who ultimately left for his second run in Kansas City, where he was a good playoff quarterback, but he never made it back to the Super Bowl in Kansas City. It does remind me of the Second Life, and I'm not talking the Visor virtual reality Second Life, but I'm talking about the second football life that Tom Brady is now pursuing in Tampa Bay. So, I did think the controversy back in the day between Montana and Young was interesting. Young went on to win a Super Bowl as Montana's replacement. It is interesting to look at how Montana, who Tom Brady idolized, ultimately went to another team, Kansas City, had a couple of Midland seasons before retiring. Could that be the path for Tom Brady? I don't know, but I just wanted to bring a quarterback controversy in that would let me talk about the GOAT. Is Tom Brady the GOAT? Tampa Bay, and is he gonna be mediocre? So I got all that.
A couple things.
Yeah.
Quick correction. Yeah. Because you may not remember, Steve Young was wearing the Tampa Bay orange.
He was
back in the day for 2 seasons before he went to Niners. So he wasn't drafted by.
Correct.
was
I'll
traded.
I'll clean that up in post. Thank you for that.
Leave it there.
Yeah.
He was traded for and still created the same controversy. Something that's slightly different is Brady had Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer on the roster. Brady could have continued, and granted they weren't going to come to contract agreement, but could have continued to stay in New England. But he was fed up. He doesn't think that he thinks he's underappreciated. He's taken.
I think the warmer climate's better for his pliability. He's doing the TB12.
100%.
So like the joints, it's anti-inflammatory with the humidity. There's a lot of reasons why it's down there.
What is it called? TB5, TB40?
TB12, yeah.
Oh, 12. That makes sense. That's his number.
Yeah, he's got this really weird logo. Tom, please come on the show, clear the stuff up. But yeah, I'm sorry, you were going somewhere.
So he feels like he's underappreciated. He's had salary-friendly deal or team-friendly deals for years. Part of the reason is a partner that is making millions of dollars in his wife, Giselle. So he can take that. So I think he wants to go somewhere where he can prove that his arm isn't a noodle.
Yeah.
They can still hit the deep out.
Got some great weapons. Yeah.
Godwin, Mike Evans.
Yeah.
You got Gronk back.
Yeah.
You got Leonard Fournette that came there on a cheap.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think there's a lot brewing. And then I just want to throw in an aging Phillip Rivers, who looks like he's shot putting the ball out every time he throws it. And he's on tail end of his career.
Yeah.
New uniform in Indianapolis, which will be strange, and him not barking at people in his Chargers uni.
Yeah.
And then you also have Cam Newton.
Cam, I was waiting for you to get to Cam. Yes.
Former MVP.
Yes.
Who no one wanted. Who Belichick picked up on the cheap, and is now leading a team. So we have he's
captain.
He's the captain. And the last one, which I think is interesting, and it's someone's swan song, you don't expect him to lead teams, is Drew Brees.
Right.
Drew Brees stepped in a little bit when, at the height post-Floyd, he said he couldn't understand why anyone wouldn't stand for the anthem. Had no respect for that type of person. He got a lot of backlash in his locker room. To his credit, and we'll see if he continues to walk the walk, his wife, himself, they apologized. They immediately reached out to learn more. So we have, it's a lot to follow as we follow the QB1s, including Lamar Jackson, who people didn't think someone could be a running quarterback and throw and still win the MVP. So not to mention Mahomes and then Dak Prescott.
Talking about controversy, Skip Bayless knocking him for his statement that he was battling depression, which is the stigmatization around mental illness and the prevalence of it in light of COVID are really interesting trends for us to watch as it relates to now it's playing out somewhat in the narrative of Prescott, who's waiting to get paid. Also, he may have a great season. He said he had trouble practicing. Like, depression is a real thing. So it'll be an interesting thing to watch, but it's another place where controversy, quarterbacks are lightning rods for controversy. It's amazing narrative. Before we wrap, are there any ways we can tie this to Friday Night Lights? Because this is our first football episode. We want to figure out how to keep doing football shows, and we may need to do a series on Friday Night Lights as a spinoff. But do you have clear eyes and a full heart about this, Tarlin? What's going on?
I have clear eyes, full heart. I did love the movie. I watched the show, but I haven't watched it in years. So what this will force me to do is binge that. Tammy Taylor, and crew, Coach Taylor, and crew.
Yeah.
And always thinking about that QB1, like, really? That's the QB1?
That's what we're talking about.
Didn't seem like he had enough zip on that ball.
Yeah.
But Taylor really was behind him. And his daughter liked him. So
right. Yeah. But it's again quarterbacks
which got awkward.
Drama. Quarterbacks it's a role that comes with much drama, and as goes the quarterback, so goes the team.
And as goes the quarterback, as goes the league. Because remember, a lot of the faces that were in the video, which forced the NFL and Goodell to make a statement following Floyd, it was the most prominent quarterbacks in the league. Deshaun Watson, Mahomes. It's interesting that the face of the quarterback has changed. it's interesting that we still have prototypical quarterbacks and people that move in different ways, which means there's just an openness to opening up the playbook. But we will watch that. We'll look forward to watching NFL, hopefully make it a full season.
Yeah.
And here's hoping that I don't go 7-7 and we actually.
And stick around for that. Remember, track us down for that bonus content. We are now live on the Apple on iTunes. We're live across anywhere you download podcasts. If it's not on a platform you used to, hit us up on @RunningItBackFM on Twitter. That runningitback.fm is our website. We are live. We're tracking football. We're tracking basketball. Let us know some topics, some ideas. We'll keep running it back. Tarlin, welcome to football season. Welcome to September, and somber day in terms of September 11th, but always fun to break it down with you. Any final thoughts?
Thanks for the time.
Awesome. As unmuffled cars are driving down 6th Avenue, this is Running It Back, coming to you live from Brooklyn and the greater LA area. We'll be back again soon. Thanks for listening.